Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Open Mic, Writers in Their Own Words, the show where every episode I talk to writers, editors, agents, and others in the publishing game to learn about them and what kind of work they do. The show is available by the same name on both YouTube and via all of the major podcast platforms, and you could subscribe to either or to both, which of course would be my preference, so you never miss a thing. I'm going to come back more with that and remind you about that later, but I want to jump right into it right now because today's show, and if I didn't say my name, I am your host, Rich Eisen. On today's show, the focus is on really one of my very favorite things in doing this, which is getting to talk to a debut author. Jennifer Moorhead's first mystery, Broken Bayou, comes out on July 1st, and she's here with me today to talk about how she got here, from the querying process to the anticipation of seeing that first book burst out into the wild. So, Jennifer, welcome to the Open Mic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is pure joy. I love it. I love getting to
Well,
talk to people about books.
I'm happy to have you here. And as I noted, Broken Bayou comes out July 1st. I know what a thrill that is. We're going to get
Yes.
into this whole process of the journey of this, of the whole the debut novel situation. But let's tell people about the book. Tell me about Broken Bayou.
Okay, Broken Bayou is about a troubled child psychologist who returns to a small Louisiana town to protect her past and winds up having to protect her life. So she very maybe accidentally gets drawn into a police investigation that is happening in this town. And that's about it.
Well, it sounds very interesting. Definitely something. And I've read a little bit of it. There's some availability stuff because I know the book hasn't come out yet, but I've got to read a little bit of it, and
Yeah.
it got me right off the bat. So I'm really
Oh, thank
anticipating it coming out. Um, so I talk with writers a lot. It's funny. I was just at Left Coast Crime in
Oh,
Bellevue
yeah.
a couple weeks ago from the date we're recording this. And,
Yeah.
it's so interesting hearing so many authors, many of whom are very successful now, talking about the process of getting that first book out. And so, I mean, it is not uncommon at all to hear people, say it took 10, 12, 15 years from the time they first came up with an idea to seeing that particular book or their first book, if that first book first manuscript kind of
Oh,
died on the vine to get out there. So tell me a little bit about how this journey has been for you. And I know there's lots of elements to it. So we're going to get into various elements of it here in just a bit, but just give me I guess the overall of how has this journey been for you?
in a word, long. It is my story is a very familiar story for most published writers. It took a long time to get here. It took a lot of rejections. I'm talking over 100. So you have to develop quite a thick skin if you're going to go the traditional route. Um, and yes, I have manuscripts that are tucked away in a drawer. The manuscript that got published, Broken Bayou, is not my first book. It's actually the fourth book that I've written. So I have three books that are tucked away and they serve their purpose, but they will not see the light of day. So those books are put up. The book before this one, I actually did get an agent with that book, but I did not sell it. It's sort of that moment where a writer learns just because you have an agent doesn't mean you have a book deal. And that book went out on submission to publishers. It just didn't hit. It wasn't the right time. At that point, I thought maybe I'll self-publish the next one. And my agent and I very amicably decided to kind of go separate ways. He was spending a lot of time in Europe and Asia and was having a hard time, communicating with me here in Louisiana. And so we just thought it'd probably be better. And I thought, oh, I'm going to self-publish anyway. And then Broken Bayou came out of a drawer and I started editing and I went, well, okay, this one's a little better than the last one. I kind of like it. And my writing group said, you got to at least give it a shot. So purely insanely, I went back into the query pool and started querying again and got a different agent. And she and I hit it off immediately, and we went out on sub, and it took maybe, I think it was about the second or third round out on sub when we got a hit, when we got a publisher who was interested. And it was, I almost didn't believe it. It was so exciting. I was just like, wait, what? This is happening, after all these years. I didn't believe it. I don't think I really actually believed it until I signed the contract with Thomas and Mercer. And then I went, oh, okay, it's real. They can't take it back now.
Right.
They've got me.
Well,
But yeah, long.
as you say, I mean, I think that's a really common story, and I think I'm really glad you brought up the whole aspect of having an agent and then having that situation not work. I'm on my third agent now.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think like a lot of writers, I think when you get an agent, you think, oh, that's the golden ticket. I'm on my
Right.
way. It's a matter of time, etc. And of course, you and I guess now personally
Yeah.
definitely know better than that. And tell me a little bit more about that experience. You said it was an amicable breakup, but I mean, I think we struggle so hard to get an agent that even when you know that that's what needs to happen, that had to be very difficult still just to say, I think I'm going to have to start over again.
It was pretty horrifying, actually, because I spent so many years trying to get an agent. And the saying is it only takes one yes. And that is absolutely true. He was my one yes. Okay. I had probably 85 no's. And the oddest thing happened. It could have been a sign, but I was so excited about the outcome, I didn't really think about it. But I queried him. Okay, he asked for a full. I sent him my full, and he emailed me back and said, "Oh, this book is really close, but I think it still needs a little work. I'm not sure if I have time to work on it, but if you have something in the future, send it to me." So I responded to his email and just said, "Thank you for your time." I mean, it was a no, basically. And I said, "Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll definitely, keep you in mind in the future." Then he emailed me back and said, "Well, I kind of can't stop thinking about it. So wait, maybe we need to have a call." And I was like, "What?" I mean, it was like whiplash. I was like, "Oh, okay. Could this be a yes?" And I mean, I really didn't even know. I was like, "Is he going to make me an offer?" I didn't really understand what it was. And so when we talked, he said, "Okay, well, we're going to have to do some work on it. But, if you're willing to do that, then let's see what happens." And I said, "Oh, all right, sure." I mean, I was all in. And he and I worked on it a lot. I think I probably over edited that book. To me, it sort of lost my voice. And one thing, that agent, he was a writer as well. And so I think he and I attacked it a little too much, almost. And he definitely saw the ending very differently than I had originally planned, but I changed it, and I changed enough about it that I think I might have just edited myself out of the book a little bit. And I wasn't terribly surprised it didn't sell. I was hopeful, but after a year and a half, I kind of thought, and the messages we were getting back from publishers told me, we had probably overdone it a little bit. And then, like I said, he was traveling. He was in Asia a lot. The time difference was hard. We were having a really hard time communicating. And I thought, yeah, I kind of thought I'm at a crossroads. So I thought about it a lot. And then in the end, I just decided it'd be better if we split. And I went the indie publishing route. I mean, I thought for sure I was going to indie publish. And so, he and I talked, and we kind of laughed about it. And he was like, "No, got it. No hard feelings." Um, and so I think he understood too. I might not have been the exact author he thought I was either. So
Mhm.
I felt like we both just were on different paths, and it was fine. And he was fine and wished me well. And he taught me a lot. and I will say he gave me a lot of his time and got nothing for it, so he worked very hard. And so I hated I couldn't sell that book, but that's just, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So on I went, and yeah, I did it. And I felt actually kind of good after I did it. I was like, okay, all right, that's done. No going back now. And I just put my head down and went back to work. And then when I found myself in the query trenches the second time, I really did think I was crazy. I was like, why did I do this? Why did I do this? Like, there should be some sort of hotline we could call, maybe when you're querying, like self-help book for querying writers. I don't know. I'm like, it's something. It's very
Well,
trying experience.
one of the things I find so interesting in on what you were just saying, because whether it's your writing group or an agent or an independent editor that you might work with, I think one of the real challenges that we face as creatives is, you know, having whatever the vision is in our head of how we want something to be will often not really jive with, an agent or somebody or even your critique group. Everyone's got their own perspectives. And I think one of the hardest things that we do is to try to, as you noted, maybe you over edited that manuscript clearly because that's what he felt needed to happen and that kind of thing. I've talked with so many writers who felt like they ultimately surrendered the control of that project to other people's perspectives. And sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it works out. I've had authors say, yeah, I've argued with my agent or my editor over and over, and then every time they were right. And I've talked to other authors who said, I argued with my critique group or my agent, and this time I was right, right?
Right.
So um, it
Yeah,
was
it's tricky.
to address that. And has it been different for you in this go round in terms of how much you're willing to change what you wrote to match what either your agent's vision is or the publisher's vision is?
Yes, it has changed. It's a 180. It's very different. One, I have a lot more confidence going into this time because I've done it before. And I do understand it's not the end of the world if a book doesn't sell. I have I think I have a very healthy perspective on it. So I went into this, saying this book may not sell, but we're going to make it the best it can be, and we're going to give it the best shot. And if it doesn't, I will write another one, because I love to write. But the first call with my agent, she and I just jived. I knew we were, on the same page, and I asked her sort of what was the vision for the book. What did she think my comps were? How did she envision the editing process going? I knew the right questions to ask. And as soon as she started answering them, I went, yeah, we're going to be good. We were very much in sync. And when I got her edits, there wasn't a lot to change, and there were no big red flags. It was just dive deeper here, go a little deeper here. Can you bring this out? And so she didn't mess with my voice at all. She just wanted a little more from certain scenes. And so that was really fun. And I had not ever edited like that before. And then when I sold it to Thomas and Mercer, the editor I had well, you have a lot of editors, but my first editor, my developmental editors, were spectacular. I mean, I really hope one day I get to work with them again, because they really know that nuanced way of getting a writer to maybe tweak something, not necessarily change it, but to tweak it with their voice. And they would teach me what my voice was. They would say, highlight a paragraph and say, this is your voice. This is solid. We want to make sure this is in, it was maybe like page 150. We want to make sure that's in page 2. Like, let's get it back to page 1. So I started to see where I could find my rhythm in writing, and where that voice was just coming off naturally, and the cadence and the rhythm and the sentence structure. And so once I got that perspective, then I knew I could edit it and keep my voice the same. I was like, okay, now I know what it is. It's that, very elusive thing, voice. And, writers hear it all the time in rejections, and it's, I didn't connect with the voice. And so you kind of think, well, I've got to change the voice, but no, you've got to find someone who understands what your voice is and can help you discover it even more. Like the editing process became very fun. And I can't believe I'm saying that the number of times the book was edited. It was,
Yeah.
but it still stayed true to what it was when it was a NaNoWriMo book. I wrote it in NaNoWriMo. And so it stayed true to that vision. And I was really happy.
Well, it's one of the things I think anybody that's an aspiring writer, or regardless of wherever you're in the process, it is difficult to maintain voice. And it's because, as anyone who's ever written a manuscript, a full-length manuscript knows, you don't just sit down and write 85,000 words. That's not how it works. It takes,
Uh-uh.
I mean, it just happens over, if you're incredibly talented and have nothing else to do, it might take you months. The rest of the real
Yeah.
world, it might take years. And then you're trying to go back and keep page 2 and page 150 and page 275 all sounding like the same person wrote it all in rhythm. And then when you've read a
Hard.
sentence or a paragraph or a chapter 150 times at least, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard for you to see those little areas where it falls out. And that's where, of course, a great developmental editor comes in, or, whatever. But it's also
Yeah.
very hard for you as the author sometimes to hear those things, because to you, your head is very different than maybe what it looks like. We just don't see the thing the same way.
Uh-uh.
So it's really
It's
fabulous that you had that experience where you felt really good about the edit, because I think a lot of times authors don't.
Well, yeah, and I've gone out of an edit feeling really bad with other books. So, this I had a comparison to what a bad edit was, and this was very different. And I went, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. And I also see the importance of, if you are going to get a freelance editor, pay someone to edit, always get a sample edit. They will all do it for free. You send them 5 pages, and I can remember when I was first, I guess, interviewing freelance editors for Broken Bayou, before I even had an agent, before I even queried, and I would send them the first 5 pages to see what their editing style was like. And I promise you, I got back an edit from a freelance editor who's was very expensive. I mean, she might have been the most expensive one that I was interviewing, and I don't know what book she read. I mean, the notes were, even the character names were wrong, the stuff in it. And I was like, okay, wait, this was just 5 pages. If you can't do that, then how are you going to do 350 pages? So you kind of think everybody's more of an expert than you, but always do your due diligence, because freelance editors can mess it up too. I mean, you got to get the right fit. You just got to get the right fit.
Very true. I have a friend down in San Diego, as a former police officer, and he writes thriller, crime fiction, procedural kind of things, and he's very good at it. He's been a bestseller, and but he was working on a new manuscript. It was set in the 1970s in a town very similar to the one he grew up in Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
and he had an editor suggested to him that he actually did the full manuscript with, and they fought like cats and dogs. She had, I'll just say, based on how he explained it to me, I think she had sensibilities that were very modern,
Yeah.
and maybe really couldn't um, get in line with a story that was set in Middle America in the 1970s. I'm old enough to remember what
Right.
that was like, and yeah, we said a
Oh
lot.
yeah.
Used a lot of vernacular, used a lot of terms, had a lot of ways of thinking that are not in line with modern sensibilities. We all should get that. But her
Right.
approach to him was almost like a scold. And who the hell wants to be scolded by your editor, right? And so
Nobody.
they got into a real bad space, and I thought, wow, that is the kind of relationship you don't ever want to have with someone who is getting an opportunity to weigh in on your work, because it's
No,
now thankfully he's at a point in his career where he's not going to be devastated by that. But when you're new in particular, and you're just like,
no.
as you said, we always think, well, this person's out for hire. They clearly know more than I do. Well, they may
Sure.
know more about certain things than you do, but that doesn't mean they know your idea or your work better than you do. And that's a hard one for us to get our heads around sometimes. So
No, absolutely. I totally agree. Absolutely.
Um,
You got to be careful.
you mentioned uh, that you'd considered going indie. Perfectly acceptable thing to do in this day and age. And I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to go independent in this day. There's some very good reasons to not go independent. I think most of us, me included, are really focused on traditional publishing and having that kind of success. There's lots of
Sure.
ways to have success in this business. Um, Maybe tell me a little bit, was there ever a time in all of this where you said, you know what? I'm not going to pursue traditional anymore. I am going to go indie. Not, I know you were thinking about it for this one manuscript, but did you ever say, look, I'm just going to go this route regardless. I'm not even going to pursue traditional anymore because I think I can do this myself, or I'm frustrated, or whatever the reason might be. Did you ever get to that point?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I was at that point when I parted ways with my agent, my first agent. And I got to that point because something very strange happened and very fun. At the same time that I was kind of parting ways with my agent, I got the opportunity. Oh, sorry, my ear thing fell. I got the opportunity to um, write and help produce a an indie short film for a contest that was happening in my hometown called Louisiana Film Prize. So I got this opportunity and I did it myself with this group. But I mean, it was something that we sort of did on our own, produced on our own, created on our own, and put out on our own. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do that with a book. If I'm doing it with this indie short film, I should try to do that with with this next book I want to do. And so I started researching what that would take. And wow, for me to do it correctly was going to take so much more work than it took to make a film that I thought I might need a team for this. I was like, wait a minute, I don't think I can do this by myself. Like, wow, it's to do it correctly. It's a lot more work to me than even traditional publishing. Um, I knew I could handle the rejection of traditional publishing because I'd done it before. So that's when I started to kind of wane and say, well, you know, maybe I'll try it. And then if I get an agent, maybe then, we'll find that corner of the road where it intersects with luck and I'll get a deal and I can have a team to help me figure this out because the research I was doing was pretty amazing. I was like, I feel like I'm in a master class for, how to market and which, I mean, look, we still have to market our own books when traditionally publishing, but with self-publishing, it's next level.
I am definitely going to come back to the indie film bit. I had that a little bit later, so don't let me forget if
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I'm
sure.
but um, I'm really interested because I think one of the things I I think the word journey gets overused a lot in our world these days, but it really is true with writing. I mean, because it is a
Oh
process.
yeah.
That's the word I use the most, but process and journey are pretty much very equal in my mind. I'm curious in this time that you have been doing this, what has been maybe the most critical part or learning phase of all of this for you? What now, and especially now that you are going to have a traditionally published work that will almost assuredly lead to more of the same. Has it been simply the determination of it all? Was there a particular skill or maybe something in your writing where you developed that voice or a particular way that you're writing now that has helped you get, is there one thing you can look to and say, thank God for that?
Yes, there is. And it is my writing group. Um, Oddly enough, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, yes, you need tenacity. You need a little to be a little brazen about it. You got to be a little confident to go into this crazy, idea of putting your work out and having people, basically tell you, no, it's not going to make it, over and over and over again. But without a writing group, I couldn't have done it. The ladies that I sort of work with, um, lifted me up when I needed it. They cheered me on. They helped me brainstorm. I could go to them and say, I am stuck and I have got to get out of this. I'm in quicksand. Maybe it's the middle, or maybe, and they'll say, okay, well, let's brainstorm. Like, come on, what are we going to do? And they're all writers, and we all get our craziness. I mean, we sit at the coffee shops and talk about things that, everybody's staring at us, thinking, please let them be writers. Because, I'm like, okay, if you have a dead body and let's say it's hot, and what are we going to do? And who can I call? I need to find out what happens when, aquatic life is brought into the equation. So we have these very, strange conversations over coffee, but they really helped me. Being able to talk to them and navigate this process journey, it would have been really difficult without a group to lean on. And, you're a writer. It's such a solitary thing to do that sometimes you just have to remind yourself, you do need to bring others in, because it'll just help your mental state tremendously through everything.
I agree. I mean, it's such a solitary process. I mean, there's only room in the chair for one butt, and it has to be yours, right? But boy,
Yeah.
before then, I always say, anyone who a regular audience member of this show knows how often I've talked about my dogs and how they benefit from anytime I get stuck on something, because they get, a 5-mile walk while I'm noodling out in my head.
Mine too.
That's
Yes.
how it works
Yes.
out. So we
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about editors and we've talked about writers groups. Are there other resources that you have found along the way that have been indispensable for you?
Yes. There's a freelance editor who I adore, Kristen Weber, Jane Friedman.
They've both been
Really
on my show,
online.
by the way. Yeah, Jane and Kristen have
Oh,
both been
I
on
love
the show.
them.
Yes.
Yeah, Kristen helped me with Broken Bayou. She's awesome.
They
And
are both awesome resources. Yes.
I mean, I tell whenever somebody says they're starting writing, I'm like, just go to their websites and podcast, the shit no one tells you about writing. Oh my gosh. I listen to it every Thursday. And I mean, I'm not even querying, and I listen, because they do the best interviews. They break down queries in first 5 pages. It's really those first 5 pages that I find interesting. And I've learned a ton listening to them dissect those first 5 pages and what needs to be there, what doesn't. So really it's a more online kind of resources. I love taking, Writer's Digest classes. I like anything to do with learning the craft still, I think is priceless. Conferences, like you were saying, Left Coast, but I'm going to Thriller Fest at the end of May. And so I'm looking forward to that. And just, being around other writers and writers who are succeeding is really important.
Yeah, I tell you, I cannot say enough about conferences. And they're all different. Yeah, in fact, this is a good thing to maybe to touch on for just a moment. I mentioned Left Coast earlier. There's VoucherCon and Thriller Fest and
Mm-hmm.
several others. There's lots of writers conferences, and I would really urge people, A, to check one out, but be aware that they're very different. As an example,
Yeah.
Left Coast, there's almost no editors or agents. So if you're looking for an editor or agent, that's not really the one for you. VoucherCon, there's more, not as many
Mm-hmm.
as there are at a lot of the big writers conferences. Like Thriller Fest will have a lot of agents, tons of them,
Yeah.
and they are there
Yeah.
looking to find new writers. So you really need to know what you want from a conference going in. If you're looking to maybe meet with other writers and have a more intimate experience, yeah, things like Left Coast are and Killer Nashville, those are great. Killer Nashville is a blend of the two. I mean, that's the thing. Do your due diligence on those as well. I think you'll find what you're looking for, but it's that there's a lot of it out there. So that's my little PSA on
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
conferences.
Agree.
Um, social media in this day and age, of course, is a big issue for a lot of writers. Um, it feels very important for us to be out there and be on social media. At the same time, though, of course, it can be so negative. And
Mhm.
even when it's not negative, it can still be very time consuming, which you could probably use that time, on actual writing or marketing of your book, that kind of thing. How do you approach social media? And maybe how has that approach changed at all? And how, since you got your traditional contract and you're getting closer to publication, is there any evolution there for you?
Well, it's I'm still evolving. Let's put it that way. It was, social media. I love Instagram. It's my favorite just because I love visual. I love the pictures. It's usually pretty upbeat or funny. And, I was here and there on social media. I mean, I was on it, but I wouldn't say I had this overwhelming presence on it. Now that I have a book coming out, yeah, absolutely. I'm on it. I am really working to be consistent, and it is turning into its own full-time job. And I've discovered, it can suck you under it. You talk about quicksand. I just am trying to be really careful with what I'm focusing on because it is important for me to market this book because I don't know how many millions of books are on Amazon right now, but if you want a shot at someone, who's not in your, 50-mile radius buying your book, you need to utilize social media. So I do a lot of classes. I look at online marketing. I kind of study authors I know and see what works and what doesn't. And I just am still trying to work on that balance. So it's hard. It's not a natural format for me. I would much rather sit down and just write. I write in Scrivener. So I would love to just open Scrivener and just sit there all day and write in that and not have to think about it. But I don't have that choice right now. I mean, I really do need to, for the book's best interest, work on, engaging. And I do like engaging with people. I think you can definitely get something from it. And it's just, getting out there and just being yourself and, hoping that you can get the message out and introduce people to your book.
Well, I love that perspective on engagement in particular. I've had this conversation with many authors, and it's off-putting to me as a reader because I am a tremendous consumer of books, as you might
Yeah.
imagine,
Yeah.
which I would be regardless of whether I ever did this show, right? I'm a huge reader anyway, but it's really
Yeah.
off-putting to me when an author's entire social media presence is pitches to buy your book. And I've
Yeah.
talked with a lot of authors about how do you build a sense of engagement so that people like you enough that you don't have to ask them to buy your book. They'll just buy everything you put out. And so I really appreciate you focusing on engagement because I do think that's a lesson a lot of writers really ought to learn. Look,
Absolutely.
we want to work and be around people that we feel connected to, right? No one wants to
Sure.
be marketed to all the time, right? That's the worst
No,
thing. So
no. And yeah, I'm with you on that too. It's, again, it's got to be a balance. Sure, at some point you're going to ask people, to buy something, but you need to give too. And,
yeah.
I think that's part of it. And it just comes back around. And I think you just make the best of it.
I think one of the things we don't focus on very much in this game is how do we get recentered when things are going south, which they often do. It's a really stressful process, which can be very negative towards your writing, right? It have a very negative impact on your
Um,
writing.
yeah.
When it's all getting to be a little bit too much, how do you step away from it and get recentered so that you can then come back to it with a clearer mind and a fresher perspective?
Well, absolutely. Like you, I like to walk. And I live on a piece of land where I have a lot of trails and there's swamps and it's very Louisiana and it's just freeing to me to be outside. I've always loved being outside, even as a kid. And so I just sort of go out and explore and walk around and look at nature. And just sort of forget anything that's inside and focus on the world that I'm in outside. And you just sort of realize, there's a lot more going on than just whatever's happening on my laptop. And it just, it recenters me a little bit. And I just love it. I love, love, love being outside in nature. I just think it's, oh my gosh, I think it's just amazing and just gives me a new perspective every time I come back in. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try this again. Sometimes I find myself taking things way too seriously. And
Yes,
you have to kind of step back and go, whoa, 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 wait. What am I really worried about here? Hang on,
absolutely.
Um,
I can totally
and
relate, Bill.
yeah. And I'm like, I don't need to take myself that seriously. No, let's give me a break. So
Well,
being outside does that for me.
let me circle back to the filmmaking thing. And when I learned that about you, I really my ears chirped up because several years ago I got involved in I really, without intending to, I got involved in a filmmaking or a screenwriting class. I really took it as a favor to a
Oh,
friend who was afraid he wasn't going to have enough people in this class to get the actual teaching, to have the class go forward. So I said, sure, I
yeah.
signed up. Well, it ended up being fine. I had plenty of people, but I did not realize that part of this class was you had to produce a screenplay for a regional film contest here in the California area. And I'm okay.
Oh, nice.
So, all right. So then as I often do, I throw myself into it, right? And at the end, I thought it was a pretty good product, right?
Yeah.
Well, so then it didn't get picked to be into this contest, which okay, I would have been fine with. I would have been fine
Yeah.
with that. Except some of the feedback I got really made me angry, right? Because it ignored because so I'm a political reporter by trade. I cover the California State Capitol. I know a lot of folks in the political realm. I had already been granted permission by the current, or at that time, the Senate Pro Tem, the leader of the California
Uh-huh.
State Senate, to use his offices to shoot the film. It was a little farcical 15-minute thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to shoot at the Capitol. And two or three of the people reviewing this said, oh, well, it's perfectly fine, except you'll never get to shoot this at the Capitol. This is a waste of.
Oh.
And did you not read my write-up? Did you not read the intro so then I got angry, right? So then I had just come into this little small pot of money that, I'd inherited from a relative. And I said, all right, well, I could do all kinds of smart things with this, but instead I'm going to make this movie, which I'd never done before. And I had done
Yeah.
stage work and stuff as an actor years ago in college and all that stuff. So I thought I had that part down. Anyway, to make a very long, boring story short, I did shoot this film, and it was a blast. It was 15 minutes of fun, really, wrapped around months and months and months of work.
Yeah.
But the point of all of this is when I saw that you had done, uh, I think I read three indie
Uh-huh.
films. I said, "Oh, we have to talk about this." So tell me a little bit about that experience, and really to bring it back full circle, how did that experience of being a filmmaker? And I did the same thing. I wrote the script, I did the production, I did hire a director and the film crew and all that stuff. I'm not stupid, but
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah, me too.
how did that process of that huge project managing job
Mm.
impact your writing? Did it give you any perspective that has been helpful for you
Oh
now?
my gosh. Yeah, absolutely it did. I The first script I wrote, the woman who actually came to me and asked me if I was willing to do it, if I'd be willing to try. I was like, sure, why not? Gave her a 50-page script. She's like, it's a minute of film per page. I went, oh, yeah, okay, got to get that down to 15 pages. Got it. And so that to me was really fun. Having to take something where, we are used to this big world building and I have 85,000 words to tell a story, to really honing it into 15 pages that are, by the way, I don't think even real full pages because of the way it's formatted, and really telling a story without the inner thoughts of your character, you know, and having to show it all and dialogue and what's going on. And so that to me was a really fun challenge to get to do. And I thought it really helped when I went back to novels. I was like, okay, you really look at every sentence and you're like, well, how important is this?
Mm-hmm.
Because, pages are also money in filmmaking. So, can I do this simpler? Do you need all of this? And if you don't, cut it. And if it still works the same, kudos, just get it razor thin. That was the most fun. And then the last one we did, I watched it. We actually had a scriptie who they supervise every scene and write stuff down. And they are the ones, if you set up a scene and then come back to it the next day, they make sure everything's where, they look at it and compare it. And so I watched over her shoulder through a monitor, and I loved it. I loved picturing a scene in a book like that within those parameters. And what do you see and how is it different? And how do people move in that space? And, what are they doing with their hands? And it really, as a writer, was quite a fun opportunity to really study human behavior in a setup and language and responses and things like that. It was great. I loved it. Loved it.
I've had several authors on the show who came from TV, and TV screenwriting, and you don't get any build-up time, right? You're up
No.
for a 30 or 60 minute
Mm-hmm.
show, which is actually, I think, 22 minutes and about 47 minutes when you deduct for commercials and everything, some small
Yeah.
amount like that. But you've got to start fast. You got to keep going. You don't get to describe somebody walking from point A to point B or what a building looks like. You just have to get it and,
yeah, you
kick
get
it out,
dropped
right?
in. Right.
Yeah.
And there's no backstory.
There's no backstory. No.
Boom. We're there. Let's go.
Yeah.
Keep it moving.
Well, I've only got a couple more, and only really one more
Sure.
serious one, which is the first book hasn't even come out, but I know authors old enough to know you're on the second one already. So tell
I
me,
am.
what happens from here? What are you working on now?
I have a book I'm working on now. It's going to be a companion book to Broken Bayou. So it's not a sequel, but I took a character. I don't want to say which one, but I took a character from Broken Bayou, and this character just stayed with me. And so I thought, well, I'll follow their story and see where it leads. And now that's waking me up every morning. I mean, when you have a character in your head going, get up, get up, get up, like I need to show you this scene. I very much write without plotting. The first draft is usually pretty hideous and wild. And I think it gives me a lot of freedom to just screw up, and it can just be whatever it wants. So I'm in that fun draft right now where I'm just like, well, I don't know what's going to happen today. Okay. And I'm just feeling it out a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna keep going with this one, and then then I'll be back in the editing part, and I'll be trying to sell it again because my deal was a one book deal. So I gotta get another one going.
I know. I'm not sure, honestly, when I'm reading Publishers Marketplace, if I'm envious of the people that get the 2 or 3 book deals, or if I'm and think that's what I would want, or if I would think, let me focus on one thing at a time. I really don't know.
I think I kind of tend toward, liking just a one book deal because it takes a little bit of the pressure off, because you still, it's not, the expectations aren't there. You're not like, oh my gosh, I'm locked in. Like I got XYZ. I got to get, you still kind of have a little freedom to go, well, all right, well, I might not sell. I mean, this one may not be the one again. It's okay. It's okay. No one's putting too much pressure on me. So it's nice.
Yeah. Well, regular viewers, listeners of this show know that I always end on this kind of a question, which is, I get to put on my hat of omnipotence. That's what I call it now. That's my unique term. I'm going to trademark that, my hat of omnipotence.
Great.
Where I have the power to put you together with one of the following 3 people for a long walk with dogs, a conversation, dinner, whatever would work for you. And I usually have a theme. You're going to figure this one out really fast, I know, but there
Okay.
is a theme here. The options that I'm going to give you are the following three
Mhm.
people. Which one would you hang out with? Uh, Joe Burrow, Huey Long, or Reese Witherspoon? So we have a football player, a politician, and an actress. Which one would you hang out with given the
Um,
and
that's tough. Okay, look, I love Joe. I love me some Joe, but I think I'm going to have to pick Reese. I think I need whiskey in a teacup. I mean, I would love, absolutely love to not only talk books with her, but to just talk business with her. She is one smart businesswoman, and
yeah, yeah.
that would be priceless.
Yeah, she's become a true entrepreneur and mogul is the right word.
Absolutely.
She's a
Yeah.
mogul in the best sense of the
Yes.
word. That's good choice. Well, I really very quickly my wife and I were at the LSU Florida game in I guess it was 2019 was the year that they won the national championship and went undefeated. Clyde
I was there.
Edwards-Helaire. I mean, that was a fabulous game. I had never been to an SEC football game before, and
Oh,
you know
well,
we
don't go to another one. There's never going to be another one like that.
oh my God, and I'd always been fond of LSU, the history tradition of LSU football. So for some reason, well, we actually were in Baton Rouge because we were going to the Angola State Prison Rodeo.
Oh,
We
uh-huh.
went ahead and made a weekend out of it and went somehow managed to get tickets to the LSU Florida game. Did the tailgating thing with all of the folks on campus and one of the great
Yeah.
experiences of my lifetime. I have never
Oh,
been in anything, and I've been to Pac-10 games
no.
out here, of course, and things like that, but never been to anything like an SEC home game. Holy cow.
Well, holy cow. I was at that game too. And the the energy in that stadium, I mean, it's
Oh,
registering on the Richter scale in Baton Rouge. And that year, it was just the golden era of football, and just getting to see him and Lamar Chase and the things they did, I was blown away. I mean, I watch professional football now because of those LSU boys. I mean, I followed them, and I'm
mhm.
watching it on Sundays now because I just want to see what they do. I mean, it's that atmosphere down there is pretty insane. It's insane.
I've been to Cal, UCLA, USC, UCLA. I've been, those big rivalry games, and they're great. They're really great, but I don't think you can top an SEC home game. I'm not sure how you
Uh-uh.
do it because it is the entire city.
No.
And
Oh no.
everywhere we went.
Yeah. And on game day, the population in Tiger Stadium is like the fourth largest city in the state. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. The tailgating alone is insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I have a good friend who went to the University of Nebraska, and I think it's very
oh
comparable to
yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
maybe
Love it.
you and Reese could get together and go see an LSU home game. That would
Well, you know what? I would love to show her that. I would really enjoy that.
well, and for anyone who didn't figure it out, uh, Joe Burrow, Huey Long, Reese Witherspoon, the connection there, of course, is Louisiana. You have, of course, the Kingfish himself. Joe Burrow went to LSU, even though he's not from Louisiana. Of course, Reese is from Louisiana. So
Mhm.
there's our connective tissue for that final question.
Love
Jennifer
it.
Moorhead, thank you so much for coming on the show. We wish you all the best with Broken
Thank you.
Bayou. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the book cover behind Jennifer's right shoulder in the background.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it comes out July 1st. You can look her up. She's online, of
Uh,
course. I think
yeah.
there it is. There she's holding it up now. Again, if you're online
Yay.
on YouTube, you see that. But look for it July 1st. Jennifer Moorhead. Again, I've got to read a little bit of it. I think it's great. Wishing you all the
Thank you.
success in the world. Appreciate you coming on the
Thank you.
show. And
Thank you so much. I loved being here. This was great.
great. Well, I appreciate that. Tell your friends. It's
I
hopefully.
will.
And so before we check out here, same thing. I'm going to remind people, folks, please, if you haven't hit subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or one of the podcast platforms, please do so. If you leave a review, that would be great too. It really does help people find the show. And if you know an aspiring writer or you're an aspiring writer, you're not going to find better advice and for a great price, 0.
Mhm.
Notice there's no advertisements or anything. This is one thing I do in my life that I do strictly because I want to. I don't want to, I'm not trying to make money at this or anything. This is just something I love writers and I love writing. I love reading. So hopefully y'all feel the same way and you will get something out of the show and you will share that with a friend who might also get something out of the show. So please be so kind as to do that for me. I'm going to thank Jennifer one more time, and then for myself, Rich Eisen, I'm going to check out with the thing I say every time, and I mean it every time. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us, so whatever you do, please make today count. Until next time, again, for Jennifer Moorhead, for myself, Rich Eisen, this has been the Open Mic Writers in Their Own Words. Take care.